Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. It's a real privilege to be invited here today. I want to thank Kat and the entire team. It's a pretty impressive venue. Hope it's not such a tough crowd, but we'll see if I can find a way to find something that puts us all on the same page and relates to someone like me who was a baseball player, left for a reason that you saw up there, and came back for the exact same reason 14 years later, and how our efforts with diversity, inclusion, and gender equality align. And I thought maybe the first thing I would do is just fill in the blank. First thing I need to do is, two people mistook me for Billy Beane of the Oakland A's when I got here today, and that's not me, from Moneyball. I'm the gay one, and he is the Republican, twice married with kids on the West Coast. So, probably the two most famous baseball players who are famous for what they did not do on the field, ironically have the same name. It's really weird. So in the video, one of the first amazing women that I ever met is my mother, and she had me when she was 18 years old, and my biological father ran off for religious reasons and never came back when I was an infant, and I was a single kid. My mom was a single mom with her only child at the time for a while, and then my mom married the gentleman you saw. That's why we have a different name, and they are still married to this day. He's the only father I've ever known. So I was raised by a man from the Midwest who was in the Marine Corps, later became a cop. I went from being an only child to the oldest of 5 boys and 1 sister in about 3 years. My stepfather had 3 children from another marriage and brought them in, and we all moved in together like a Brady Bunch at that same time, basically. So I had never met anybody that was gay. I didn't even really know never heard of it until I went to college, honestly. I was in the major leagues by the age of 21. I played football and basketball and baseball, 3 sports growing up, so I grew up in a very conservative, religious Catholic household. And at the dinner table, my dad, as I mentioned there, he used to, I can't think of, Midwest upbringing, being in the Marine Corps, Catholic, 5 boys at the table. It's like a perfect petri dish for homophobia and discrimination kind of jokes. And I guess because I was good at sports, and there was never an image that I saw, I didn't even think that I could be gay. It didn't really resonate. All I knew is I wanted to play center field, in Yankee Stadium or Dodger Stadium, which I was lucky enough to do ultimately in my life. And I was, like I said, in the big leagues early, and it wasn't until I'd been playing for a while that I met somebody and got married way too young to an amazing person who I still am very close with today, but that was one of the more difficult mistakes of my life. But I met somebody, left my marriage immediately, and tried to live a double life as a Major League Baseball player, which I do not suggest for anybody, especially in the early 90s. You can see I played a long time ago, and I thought I was managing that secret. I really did. I met a wonderful person who taught me a lot about life, and but the two worlds, in my opinion, could never collide. I hid not only him, but my relationship. My parents did not, they had seen him one time before he passed away, and that was in passing in a group, and I thought I would never tell my family, and that's, again, back to the video where my dad was, I think, really the reason I never thought I would come out. And it wasn't until after my partner died of HIV-related causes in 1995, in January, or April, I'm sorry. And the doctor that we visited prior to his death looked at me straight in the face and said, "You're going to become HIV positive and have to deal with this within the next 18 months, as he handed me a negative test, which leading up to that, I thought for sure we were both but I was spared and very lucky, and it was a very interesting education in the way that the HIV community is discriminated against as well inside of the LGBT community, which is a whole other conversation. But I was going to the park, hiding the secret that I was gay, grieving the loss of a partner, and definitely sure I was going to become HIV positive. And baseball is a very physical sport, and you slide, and you're in the trainer's room all the time, and you're around, and it was eating me alive. And right around the time that I thought, or that I was starting to be a very good, or pretty good Major League player, I wasn't going to make an all-star team or make millions of dollars, but as you saw, I played for a little while. But after a while, can you hear me still? Can we do this? I think it's a little better. I'm getting a little feedback. So after a while, I started to play well, and then all of this stuff started to derail off the field. And when the 1995 season ended, for some reason, I got in an airplane. I went to Miami Beach I picked like the best city I could think of as far away from San Diego, and just never went back to spring training. And I just decided I can't manage the lie anymore. And I thought I was just going to live this quiet little life. I got a dog right away, and Miami's a really wonderful place to live if you've ever been there. And until somehow, some way, I was doing some business things, and I started to open a restaurant, a business I had no business being in, but I met somebody who was in the restaurant business, and a lot of former athletes do that. And a fluff story about a new restaurant in Miami Beach turned into a coming out story about a former Major League Baseball player, a female writer for the Miami Herald named Lydia Martin, was really, really adamant about me telling the truth while she was going to talk about this restaurant. And I had been out of baseball for 3 years. And not one person ever had, I never told anybody. I had started to meet a couple people here and there, and, was doing the closet thing, and, but was, just living my life in Miami. And then all of a sudden, the story goes from story about a little restaurant to front page with pictures of me in my baseball uniform, and then it became, as you know, before the internet and all that stuff, in 1999, I was on the front page of the New York Times Sunday edition, above the fold, which was a term I had never heard before, but was told that was even more important. And I literally had no freaking clue why anybody wanted to talk to me about that. All I could think of was that I did not go to my partner Sam's funeral because I had a game that day, and that if someone found out about that, they would think that I was like the worst person ever. And, looking back, I made a lot of decisions trying to please the world that really backfired on me. And if you try to please everybody, I guarantee you're going to hurt the ones that love you and that you love the most. And those are lessons that we all learn as we get a little older. But all of a sudden, people like the great Diane Sawyer, calling me personally on my first cell phone, Billy, this is Diane Sawyer. I'm a TV news reporter from ABC. I'm like, yeah, I've heard of you before. So, and she had done a great interview a year or so before with Ellen that was a big deal to me because I was in the closet at that time, and I got asked by every hotshot sports person in the world to do that interview. And like I said, I was like a marginal player who had my best years in front of me. As you know, baseball is a hard sport and it takes a while, but I did not accomplish the things that I had hoped. But I was blown away by her, and I thought that she was amazing. And she did a story that literally changed my life overnight, again, because there were zero role models, especially male role models. But I would say, on one hand, besides Martina Navratilova and Billie Jean King, who blazed the trail for all of us, but especially men, there were just none. And I'm sure they wished I was a better player, or was Magic Johnson or somebody else. But I was just Billy Bean, but everybody wanted to talk to me, and I thought I had done my part. I did Diane Sawyer. I was on ESPN, I did a couple magazine things, and I just thought, I don't have any expertise, or, I'm not familiar with my own community. All I've done has been disrespectful and lied about it. I was, hiding in the closet. Like, who wants to talk about that? And the point of this whole story is there's two women that I met. Well, I was trying to think of, what's relatable to here today, but two women that I had never met that changed my life in the same day, forever. And after all that, I decided I had done enough. I had done my part. I was just going to live my own little life, not pay attention to anything that was important. In Miami Beach, I was really disconnected from my family. It was, very, very hard. And I got a call one day from a woman named Elizabeth Birch, who I hope you guys, I'm sure somebody has met her before. She's a force of nature who used to be the executive director of the Human Rights Campaign right around that time. And I had never met her, I'd never heard of her, but this woman would not leave me alone, and she wanted me to come to Washington, D.C. and meet some people in the LGBT community. It was like a high-level donors for Human Rights Campaign, which is one of the largest LGBTQ advocacy group that is bipartisan and works to change laws for civil rights for LGBT, is cognizant of the gender expression, gender identity. I mean, literally on the forefront, and they intersect with everyone's life in this room, I promise you. I had none of that knowledge, but Elizabeth brought me and she said, listen, Billy, just one day, just please come. I just want you to meet a few people, and that's it. I promise you I won't bother you anymore. So I come up to Washington, D.C., and I get ready to walk into a room. It was a big hotel, but it was one of those sort of middle-sized rooms with round tables, probably 70, 80 people in the room. Everyone was wearing tags like everyone today, and I was assigned to sit at a table, and I sit down, and I look to my right, and I meet, say hello to a few people, but I was really, really nervous. And I look to my left, and I see a name tag on this woman, and it said Judy Shepard on her name tag. And for anyone, the story is not new. It's 20 years old. It's unbelievable almost. But a young boy named Matthew Shepard was one of the most well-documented hate crimes in our country's history. There's been many more that have gone undocumented, sadly, but he was a little guy from Laramie, Wyoming. And I think what caught the attention of the world and the country was that two kids, same race, from his high school, were not comfortable with him being an out, gay male, and tricked him to go for a ride in a car and beat him to death with a baseball bat and tied him to a fence where he died on the highway. He was actually found right before he passed away and died in the hospital. It's a difficult story, but it was kind of a threshold moment for hate crimes conversation, legislation, and that nature. And Judy, this was all fresh in our minds. This had happened less than a year. This amazing woman who probably never thought about LGBT rights, except that her son came out to her when he was like 10 years old, in Wyoming, which takes a lot of courage. And to think, as if there are mothers in the room, what couldn't be a worse thing to happen to anybody or a parent than to lose a child, especially when someone's taken from us in that way. But I looked at her and I literally was overcome with shame, like to a degree that this woman was trying to make a difference under those circumstances, and I was trying not to make a difference because I just didn't want to be bothered, and I felt really insecure about my place in this kind of conversation. And she just looked at me and she said, Billy, you have a chance to change the dialogue. And she said, it almost killed me. She said, Matthew would have been so excited to meet you today. He loved baseball. And I thought, and she said, you would have been a hero to him. And I think, like, what is a hero? big-time athletes get a lot of love because they're really good at, with their body and, making baskets or hitting home runs and stuff. And here I was, a guy in the big leagues and, could hold my own with pretty much anybody, and was afraid to even tell my own family something about me, hiding, lying, not going to a funeral for someone that I love more than anybody in the whole world. He was my family, and I chose my employer over that moment, and I can't change that ever. And then you think about Matthew Shepard, who was 5'2", 115 pounds, walking through the halls of his high school in Laramie, Wyoming in the 90s, out and proud to be the best he could be, and said, I'm willing to let you judge me for whatever because I'm being my best self. And so, I fell apart. It was embarrassing, but it was something, that moment, those two women, Elizabeth got me there. She knew Judy would slay me. I knew it. It was one of those things. She didn't have to try, and I just said, I don't even know what to do. I don't know anything, and I don't want to let anybody down, worse, And she just said, just be yourself. She says, that's what I do, So in opportunities like this, I'm not here to tell you what to think or what to do. This is not a lesson in semantics. I should be in the back row listening and learning, but the experience that I have, and I can tell you from that experience, is that the day that I stopped lying about myself and trying to be my best self and allowing, the things that I can't control to, fall away, was when my life, it seemed like light started to shine on it. And I started getting involved in meeting people, all kinds of people. Not just LGBT, but I got to meet people that I could relate to or had experience. And there's so many parallels between us lifting each other up, but people got to know what you're about too. You can't just, they're not going to knock on your door and pull you out and tell you, hey, we're going to go fix your life. You got to be vocal. And it seemed like, the subtext of all the stuff we're reading is that get involved, speak up for yourself, talk to each other. We don't have to be afraid. And if there's anything that is relatable between our two experiences, that I can't tell you how scary it is when you're a baseball player and you want to walk into a room of Major League Baseball players and talk about LGBT issues, okay? It's no different than being the only woman in the room. Sometimes I'm going to tell you it's worse, because if anyone's been discriminated more than men, if women have been, the only group that maybe have been discriminated more than women by men is, I think, the LGBT or gay men, because that is how feminism or sexism is wrapped inside of homophobia. We feminize guys to make them feel less. So that's, by proxy, discriminating towards women. And these are the kind of things where, in the conversations that I have, I share. They see a former player for the very first time. I've already been asked to go speak to hockey players and NFL players because there's just so few of us. And to walk into these kind of rooms and try to explain to them that it's not an indictment about you if you have respect and have a sense of companionship or empathy for all of us. We all deserve a chance to be at the table if that's the table we want to sit down at. And that's my opinion. And I can tell you that 12, 13 years that I was away from baseball were such a learning experience. I became more of a person from those years, invisibly, being out there, learning and being around different kinds of people from all walks of life. And I got a call from Major League Baseball where this conversation is so new. There's no one in any other sport that has a job with my title. And I'm very proud of baseball for taking that initiative. But I was 13 years away. They never called me one time. I wrote a book 12 years ago at the urging of Elizabeth and these kinds of people, just to share the story. And it's interesting that all the things that I wrote about in 2003 or 4 have started to come true 10 years, 12, 13 years later. It's a huge privilege to be in that position, But I can tell you that it's also one of the most frustrating environments because we stumble and we fall and we have setbacks, but the effort is there. And I can't tell you the effort. We have a thing called the Trailblazer Series where we invited 100 women athletes, 16 to 12 and 12 and under, to play baseball. We uniformed them. All the referees and umpires were women. We did it on 70th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball. And then we took 100 women athletes to the Dodger game for the unveiling of his statue, and we were on the field. And there's an understanding, and maybe the four sports, major sports are, slower to the conversation than they should be, but I really trust and believe that we have a chance to fast forward the conversation more so because so many people that are stuck in those bad places really value what they're watching and what the athletes are saying. I feel like we could talk forever, but I want to make sure, I don't want this opportunity to go by, our time is short, without talking about stuff that matters to you guys. So I guess for me, I'm really grateful that Kat made the invitation, and some days it feels lonely. The first year that I was talking, I got invited to talk to half the league that first year. I didn't know, I took the job with Major League Baseball, and the only thing I told the former commissioner who was there when I started was, I don't want this to be mandatory. I want this to be by invitation, and MLB Network made that was cut down for you guys from an hour, so I hope it wasn't too choppy. But it's been an amazing journey to see where this conversation has taken us, and we have some incredible programs. I just got the most comprehensive anti-bullying or bullying prevention program approved, which means we're paying for it, in a partnership with ESPN called Shred Hate, that is going to go into the schools of the cities that we play in, which for me, we're all indebted to, thank you. It's a 3-year plan. We'll be in 9 cities in 3 years. I hope we'll be in all 30 of our markets in 10. But baby steps on that, but we're in 35 schools. We're working with an incredible nonprofit. But for me, there are some people that are receptive to the conversation, and then there was a moment where I said, I need to figure out a way to move this dialogue that encompasses all of our conversation about diversity, gender identity. To think that my job is to make sure that our commissioner understands why people are going after the transgender community because of bathroom bills. It just took one example. I just pulled, in the archives of Google, and I pulled stories in the 60s about water fountains. Same thing for the African American community. When you're trying to polarize people and keep bigotry and hatred in this world, you got to find things that, it's like marriage equality. I will never understand why that bothers people, because it's not really anything to do with them, but it does. So these detractors from progress and unity bring these kind of conversations. And now there's an opportunity each and every day, at least for me, to try to make a difference off the field in a way that I didn't while I had the chance when I was on the field. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share some time with you. And I think we have exactly 10 minutes left. So if you want me to not talk about analytics or batting styles or something, ask some great questions, and anything's on the table. So anything from the video or whatever that bothered you or you liked or whatever, fire away.
Thanks. I thought it was really interesting, you're talking about masculinity and the identity as a professional athlete.
Right.
Being equitable with, say, women leaders in advertising and femininity, because it's I think for many of us at the executive level, and at the starts of our career, middle, actually any level, one of the most common complaints is, sorry, I didn't realize this was actually a speaking dice, sorry. I'm usually pretty loud. That you're too tough. As a female leader in advertising, I've heard too tough, too demanding, rude, disrespectful, just with a management style that's forceful. And I wonder if you could comment on, just like I said, raising the specter that we have to behave a certain way to be seen as a leader or a professional athlete, which, like you said, of itself is fraught with complexity. So
yeah, it's a very interesting balance, because I can tell you, the reverse of that is that every single day that I am an example or an image, and I'm in front of the cameras a lot, I'm on the TV a lot, I've thrown out the first pitch 10 times probably in games, I am so worried about coming off in a way that doesn't perpetuate a stereotype that my community does not deserve, because it's like something as silly as throwing out the first pitch. You guys, how many times have you ever seen on a ESPN or a sport network someone throw out the first pitch? And I bet 100% of that time it was because it was really bad, right? Right? Not good? So for me to carry the plight of all LGBT athletes in that one moment, ESPN would love nothing more than for me to humiliate myself in that way. So I think about that all the time. I overdress, I don't grow a beard, I keep my hair short, I do all the things because I feel I'm holding this baton for a minute in the spectrum of, and I need a whole army with people, men and women with me. And I think that an interesting example, we speak to the top 4 rookies of every organization. It's called the Rookie Career Development Program every January. Teams, we have 30 teams. They send 4 players that are ready to go to the big leagues the next season. And for our diversity conversation, when I first came to baseball, it was like, wow, look at how great baseball is. They brought back a gay player, good for us. So, but I've tried to expand that conversation every year and pull myself out of the story and get to what's important. So I invited a young woman named Rachel Balkovec, who is a trainer for the Houston Astros organization, and she's fierce and awesome. And we went out to dinner with a bunch of people that were going to be speaking the night before, because a lot of people are in new situations in baseball, just like this. You don't know exactly what you're going to come into. And we were just talking about how the day would roll out, and she was beside herself. What should I wear? Like, does she want to be herself, like her off-the-field self, or is she going to wear sweats like that say Houston Astros on it, because that would be appropriate? Ironically, all the players were given like sweatsuits to be comfortable, and they mixed them in groups and stuff because certain colors and things like that. So, but she was really, really worried about coming off too feminine, too masculine. Am I sexy? Am I not? And I think that I'm going to tell you my first reaction is the bigger picture is it's not exactly that moment, okay? So you have to be who you are. You're never going to be able to accomplish anything. But understanding that if you're a pioneer in your startup company, or you're one of the first, or you're an institutional IBM, and have a job that affects 400,000 employees, keep your eye on the big goal, which is to accomplish what the business, and then for the moment, or for that meeting, or for whatever, just play within. It's like being stubborn, and you're a pitcher, and you're just said, you know what? I'm going to throw this guy fastball right down the plate every single time because I'm going to prove that I'm a badass and better than him. But he could be a great fastball hitter, and throw him a curveball or change, and he'll swing and miss. Like, you got through that moment. You know what I mean? So for me, I think that every situation is different, and certainly to be for me, not to believe that I could go into my general manager and say, my partner died yesterday, and I have a funeral on Saturday, and I'm going to be an hour late to batting practice. I didn't even believe that I deserved that. So we're coming, I get it, is what I'm saying. So, but I think keeping your eye on the ultimate prize, not being yourself, I mean, I think we're all conditioned enough to know that as long as it's appropriate, there's some space inside of that. So, okay. I hope that helped.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, Billy. It's really inspiring. I was watching the World Series last week, and a player made a racist gesture after hitting a home run off of an Asian player.
Yeah.
And I wondered how you felt the league handled it, how the players handled it. I know I had to explain to my 2 Asian kids who didn't even know that kind of racism exists, what that meant. So it was a learning moment and a teaching moment for me, but I was wondering how you felt.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for that question. That was, that's right in the lane of my job. So it's like a punch in the gut. Baseball is tough in many ways. We have the biggest sport. Every team's got 7 or 8 minor league teams. We have academies in South America. Yuli Gurriel is the name of the player who played for the Houston Astros. Ironically, in the greatest moment of his life, in less than 10 seconds, he made it the worst moment that he will never, ever be forgiven for. And what's your name? Rick. So what Rick asked is that Yuli Gurriel plays first base for the Houston Astros, and Yu Darvish, who is a very successful pitcher from Japan, was pitching, and he had a home run off him, and he made a gesture in the dugout on national television in World Series by putting his fingers and pulling his eyes apart to represent a terrible old 1,000-year-old stupid stereotype, about Asian citizens. So I can tell you that 100 people that run baseball were on the phone within 5 seconds and were throwing up on ourselves. I mean, the amount of work and effort and how quickly one person who's a part of a big picture or a big group can affect the brand or the intentions of, and ironically, Yuli played in Japan 2 years ago. He's 33 years old, he's not 18. And culturally, the way it has been interpreted, he was trying to say that he did not do well in Japan. And he hit a home run, and Darvish had gotten him many times before, and he was trying to say, I finally got he even used the word chinito, who, for those who speak Spanish are from, that is not a slur in Cuban culture. But here we are, a person is first year in the United States, doesn't speak English at all. And the understanding of how, when you represent your $10 billion industry on national television, the one thing I can guarantee you is that every single player is going to hear about that in spring training next year to a point where they're going to get sick, okay? Because, and the other thing Rick was mentioning is, how do we punish that? What's the punitive, what's the perfect decision? And I have to give our commissioner credit for the stress that I witnessed him under a very small window of time. Big sports have what's called players' unions, and a union, it doesn't matter what any person does, they can file a grievance to stall the process, and I think that I was not a part of the decision, and I have my own personal feelings about it, but how we reprimand, it's like every parent, that conversation, one parent's view of how they do, it's tough. But we wanted to get something tangible for that people to put their hands around and know that it was not acceptable behavior. And I hope it never happens again. So, got time for a couple more, I hope?
Ready to catch it? I wanted to ask about how you strategize opening the conversation when you meet resistance within the organization, like you said.
Say that first part again?
Sorry, what is your strategy for continuing the conversation and making progress when you meet resistance? Like you said, major league sports players aren't all going to be open to these kinds of conversations. So what is your strategy to furthering the cause when you meet that?
Okay, so the question was, what is my strategy when I met with resistance? And that was the inception of the idea for the Shred Hate is what my bullying prevention campaign with ESPN's called. Shred Hate, Shred Hate, Shred Hate, if you want to talk about it online. But my strategy is to try to be the best living example of what I'm trying to talk about. And that is our efforts to attract individuals who want to come work in baseball that are women, women of color, men of color, people living with disabilities. The part that's hard about baseball or sports in general is that it's much like the entertainment industry, or radio, or actors, or singers. Like, there's a long line of people that want to do those jobs, so we don't offer very much money to really talented people, and really talented people, most times people of color and women, have really great options if they, are able to get into that, a conversation with the right person or wherever they're looking towards. So there is a lot of resistance, and I think that I went from a life where I was just worried about myself, and then all of a sudden now I'm trying to help or be a voice for this big institution, and I feel like I'm sliding backwards some days, like what happened in Game 3. And then I see just tremendous efforts like the Trailblazer Series, where we have 6 fields of just great little girl, female athletes playing baseball. So maybe they won't become major leaguers. I hope one does, but maybe they'll want to go into the front office if they fall in love with it, or so. So trying to find a relatable conversation, and I can tell you that I didn't think I would ever find anything that other player could relate to. Because the first thing I tell guys when I go into the big league clubhouse is, I'm not here to talk about your personal life, or I'm not here to change your religion. I'm not here to tell you or feel sorry for me or cry because whatever happened to me. But the one thing that's been interesting is that I challenge them as parents. And a lot of the guys are parents now, not all of them, but someday they will be. And I think we all dream about, there's this great little, rite of passage if you're good enough to play in the big leagues long enough and have your little son run around with your jersey on in the clubhouse. It's like, chest pumpers, like that kind of stuff. So, but it happens all the time, and all the great players do it. But I try to challenge them about the kind of conversations that are going to be at their dinner table. I love my dad. He's still with, I've been married 40 years, and, he loves his country. He was a cop for 30 years after being in the Marine Corps. He's a solid, and, I know exactly what I'm going to get with him. And he didn't mean to be what he was, but he didn't know any different. So I try to challenge the players, like, what kind of kid do you want to raise? Do you want to raise a bully, or do you want to raise a great kid who brings people together and unifies people, and like Jose Altuve of the Houston Astros or something, this is a miracle of that came to baseball, who's just so easy to like. So for me, I deal with it every single day, and I try to find something that the person that's creating that resistance can relate to, that's not necessarily about my best interests. Okay, I think we're done. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.